Hello, blessings. I'm Guillermo Martinez. I'm here in my studio in Majeska Canyon, California. Today we have something special planned. We're going to be talking about a very special part of the native flute, the saddle, the top piece or the fetish. So why this is important is because it actually helps create the sound. Without this, you get no sound out of the flute. The way the flutes are designed, you have two chambers, and this is kind of the link or the bridge between the two. Now these would come in different shapes, and most commonly in the old style flutes, they would be in a bird shape. And this has to do with the historical stories and the legends of the native flute and how it came to be. Every maker has their unique signature style or signature shape. I can tell by looking at a certain flute, okay, this is so-and-so's flute, and this is so-and-so's flute, just by maybe certain design elements or shapes of the fetish or the bird. I'm trying to keep in line with the story that it represents a bird, so mine are very much in a bird shape. The important part of the saddle is creating that bridge between two channels. In here, you can see the inside of a flute of mine. It's got these two channels. This will have another part, so this is only half of a flute. As you can see here, this is the pressure chamber, this is the sounding chamber, but you can see the space here, and usually it's about a finger width. There'd be holes put on either side of this, and that's the part that needs to be bridged. And over here, we flip it around, you can see my nest that I routed, and you can see it's centered, the depth is important, and you can see my pencil lines, which later I will mark out where the holes will be. We'll have one right here at the very edge, and the other one maybe just back a little bit from that edge. Normally, if you look at older flutes, you wouldn't have these little raised sections on the side. I used to actually, in the beginning, I would take it all out. And so here's a flute body. This is a Southern A flute in red cedar. You can see the glue, mouthpiece of walnut glued on here. As I was making these, one time I left it on, and I decided, because I do have an engineering background, decided, well, that would be good to leave it there because it would actually lock the saddle in place. The saddle will fit in here, and it only goes forward and back. It doesn't go side to side, and that was a problem with earlier flutes of mine. Well, pretty much all flutes at the time, because none of them had this side thing. And so I started leaving that in, and I noticed that it didn't affect the sound whatsoever. It actually improved it, because it kept, the wind coming across, you had this little bit of a ridge that would keep, the airflow focused to the front, and so it would play outside in windy conditions. And so later, when it's shaped, it will look more like this one, where it's a little thinner, nicely sanded, nicely rounded over, which is another key signature of my instruments. Let's talk about voicing. Voicing is the term used for how you create the mechanics of the whistle. Okay? Here you can see very clearly the air channels. These are where the air will come through when this is on here. And the air will come up and through that groove, across, over the opening, hitting the fipple, creating the whistle. So this is, I believe it's called the Eastern Woodlands voicing. Eastern Woodlands are, from the northeast part of the United States, and supposedly they would carve the bodies. Mine are all carved by hand, using chisels and a knife and some files. And that way I can control the back pressure, the sensitivity of the instrument, and gives my instrument its signature sound. It has to be precise and accurate in creating this whistle mechanism, so when it's on there, you get a nice, good sound. You can see it doesn't play without this. As long as it's positioned properly, you're in a good place. You'll get really clean sound. Another key thing is how you carve that channel is important. And it's something that those who apprentice with me, something they learn, and we practice and practice and practice. You practice on bamboo a lot to create the correct amount of back pressure so that they can play easily with minimal amount of pressure. Don't have to blow too hard. And also you can have dynamic range. And what I mean by that is that you can play it soft, you can play it medium, you can play it loud, and the flute will respond to that. That's a really key feature that I find in the flutes that I create. That's how important it is, the voicing, or that combination of your saddle, and the nest area, because that's where the whistle happens. Because you have to think of it as a sound generator. You have to make it as accurate and as smooth as possible, and that'll give you that beautiful sound that everybody wants to hear. Okay, in making one of these saddles, the way I make them takes 17 steps. We start first with hand selecting the woods. We cut, we glue, we plane, we cut to size, and we drill, and we get it to this point here. These are made in long strips, and then they're cut to size and so forth. And then here's a really key part which I want to bring up is this routing of this groove here, which we call the chimney. The chimney is traditional. You see it on older flutes. It's actually a very key part of what they call a warbling flute. And so I've always done that, always kept the chimney on there from the very beginning. Then there's cut into shapes. Then you decide which shape you're going to cut. Then you start the hand sanding process, which is 4 grits of paper, 100, 120, 180, 220. Then there's 3 coats of finish, and then at the very end, if you like, you put in a gemstone. This is something that I've been doing for years, and I see a lot of other flute makers doing this now. It's not a problem. I got my inspiration from another maker. What I always tell my apprentices, is that when you go, take those skills that you learn, but create your flutes in your own style. Create a signature style for yourself. Don't just replicate what I taught you exactly. The voicing is important, so maybe, keep that. But maybe the shape of your saddles, the shape of your flute bodies. I'm inspired by classical furniture makers, by the way. Sam Malouf, Nakashima, Eames. When I've been traveling the world, I always would go into museums and I study design. I look at how things flow into one another, the marriage of materials. I take all these things in consideration in making my instruments. Now I want to talk about wood. Wood is what I work with. It's an important medium for me. But wood comes from trees. And this brings about the subject of exotic woods, the use of them, because that means they have to come from somewhere other than where you live. I was just talking to a friend earlier about the use of woods, and he uses woods that are, native to Patagonia in southern Argentina. He says, what I use would be exotic for you, and what you use would be exotic for me. He uses woods that are native to his area, and he's very, very keen on using just those woods, because he feels the wood should come from the area that you're from. And because then the flute is representational of that land, of that area where it's being played. Some people ask me, for exotic wood flutes, and some I comply with because they're sustainable. They're grown in a good way. They're not clear cut. They're not taking down tons of trees in the Amazonian rainforest. I just try to stay with sustainable woods because, woods, some trees are endemic. They only grow in one part of the world. So we have to be careful about how we source woods. Here in my saddles, you can see I have 2 examples of exotic woods. These are, as you can You can see they're just detail elements. You know, here we have zebra wood, and here we have pavo amarillo. This is from Central America, and this one's from Africa. And they both on the bottom have cherry, which is native here to North America. But it's a nice little accent piece. It's just a small piece. It's not like the whole flute. It's just a small section. So that's kind of what I do. I try to use more of the exotics as an accent piece, and I feel good with that. In closing, you know, these instruments of mine, you know, were a combination of crystals, gemstones, domestic woods and exotic woods, and, you know, years of experience. You know, I feel like I have a legacy that's being left behind. I'm coming up in age. I just turned 60. I don't know if I'll be around till I'm 90. The world being the way it is, we can't count on certain things, but we can count on us leaving this earth, as many of my teachers have already. But I do have my students that are still younger than me, and they're working and doing good work. And so I feel like I left something behind, something good, something beautiful, something positive. I tell you that, you know, just see what you can do. See what you can do in your life to leave something positive, whether if it's raising your children to be conscious human beings, or just taking care of your little part of the world where you live, you know, and being respectful and being connected to the natural world and to humanity. So that's what I leave you with. Tazo Kamate.